Starting on the parking lots and airstrips of the 50s and 60s, the legend of Big Daddy was fueled by the speed records. That, however, is only part of the story. The rest is innovation. In 1971, he debuted the rear-engine dragster, and the sport never looked back. A legend is not nurtured without controversy. The early 80s featured legendary confrontations with Shirley Muldowney. Sometimes he won, sometimes he did not, but the reputation grew. In 1984, Don Garlits made an unbelievable one-race comeback at the U.S. Nationals, winning the event and adding another chapter to the legend. In 1985, he returned to the sport full-time and won the Winston Championship. But 1986 is the year that will live as his greatest. He introduced his revolutionary Swamp Rat 30 Streamliner at the Gator Nationals. He flipped it over at the Summer Nationals, yet won his second consecutive championship and third overall. Don Garlits retired after flipping Swamp Rat 31 at a match race in 1987, but the embers still burn, and they have erupted into flames this weekend at the Southern Nationals. Here he has debuted Swamp Rat 32, and it is aerodynamically innovative. The narrow rear end cuts the wind, as does the beautiful single strut wing. Innovations true to the Garlits legend, but it was not to be, as Big Daddy failed to qualify.
Well, anytime you have an evolutionary new car on its first outing, Don, things are bound to be a little bit tough. You didn't quite make it, but a nice effort at 5.11 on that final shot.
Well, it moved around a little bit there in the middle. You can see the tires are blistered. It got a little loose in the center of the racetrack and probably gave up a little bit.
But that was enough of a run to really give you a feeling for this new car.
Oh, yeah, the car feels nice. It goes nice and straight. Does kind of like you tell it to.
Retirement for a legend? There's no such thing. The National Hot Rod Association presents Championship Drag Racing on ESPN Speed World. The NHRA, the world's largest motorsports sanctioning body, showcasing speeds in excess of 300 miles an hour and traveling the quarter mile in less than 5 seconds. Championship Drag Racing from the NHRA. Today, the $18 million 18 event Winston Championship Drag Racing Series stops in north central Georgia as we welcome you to coverage of professional round competition at the 5th event on the tour, the 12th annual Fram Southern Nationals. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave McClellan, and welcome to the new Atlanta Dragway, located just north of Atlanta, Georgia. I'll tell you, it feels like the north. The weather has definitely taken a turn for the much colder conditions. How that will affect the running of our race cars is a story in itself. For more on that, here's my good friend Steve Evans.
Well, David, indeed, we have our jackets on for the first time this weekend, and here in Don Perdome's pits, crew chief John Medlin and his guys have a lot of thinking to do. You get a 30-degree shift in the weather. For the positive, you're going to make a lot more power. That means less nitro. A lot of things have to be adapted.
Yeah, we have to compensate for the change in the atmosphere all the time. Sometimes some of the components on the car are a little bit temperature compensating in themselves, like the fuel pumps and some of the other things, maybe the blower. So we just try to compensate for the change of the air and then make the equivalent adjustments in the clutch.
It's a bonus in horsepower that can bite you.
It can sure bite you. It can be a bonus on the one hand, having an increase in performance, but also can smoke the tires.
Go get them.
We're going to try.
David, we saw one team, the funny car crew of Cruz Pedragon, actually lower the compression ratio on the motor this morning, hoping to calm it down in this good air.
Thanks, Steve. We'll see whose tweaks compensate best for the cold weather. The 1992 NHRA Fram Southern Nationals is being brought to you by Fram Oil Filters. Fram, you can pay a little now or a lot later. And by Goodyear, #1 in tires. And by Valvoline. People who know, use Valvoline. Top Fuel action coming up next. We're back in the top fuel pit area at the 12th annual Fram Southern Nationals at the new Atlanta Dragway. Corey McClenathan and his crew preparing his race car for the next round of competition. It appears that it's going to take good low 490s or even better to win this drag race. We asked McClenathan's crew chief Jimmy Prock if this car is capable of maintaining that kind of consistency. Jimmy, what do you think it's going to take to win this race?
Well, we'll have to be consistent, and it's going to take somewhere down around a low 490 or 80 per. I think we have it in it. It's just a matter of getting the clutch right. The power's there.
Corey McClenathan has the capability of running in the fours, has shown it all year, but it hasn't translated into points. He's currently 8th in the standings that are headed by Kenny Bernstein and Pat Austin. Corey Mack here at Atlanta has qualified in the number 3 spot at a 4.91 second elapsed time. In round number 1, he faced up against Jack Ostrander, who had qualified at a 5.07. Ostrander went up in smoke, and it was Corey McClenathan advancing to round number 2 with another 4, a 496 at only 253 miles an hour. As I said before, Kenny Bernstein is the points leader. He is also the first man ever over 300 miles an hour. In round number 1, he faced the number 16 qualifier, Pat Austin. He had qualified the Castrol car at an off-pace 5.09. Bernstein had qualified with a new track record 4.85 for the Budweiser King. The question has been all weekend, can Bernstein run another 300? Here he went 298 and a half.
We'd sure like to do it for him, believe me.
493.
493, that's not bad. We softened it up. We just didn't want to smoke the tires. Now we'll get after it and see if we can make it run 300 for him.
Looking forward to it.
In another first round race, it was disappointment for Scott Coletta in the Coletta Flying Services car. He had qualified well at a 5.04. Then on the burnout against Don Prudhomme, the tires smoking and the supercharger let go. Prudhomme got an easy bye run to advance to the second round. You remember all those adjustments that John Medlin told us about in his conversation with Steve earlier? Well, guess what? They worked to perfection. 4.88, low elapsed time of the first round, and that time is a major improvement over his qualifying run, where the best he could muster was a 4.99. In the second round, it was Corey McClenathan racing against Doug Herbert, while Eddie Hill challenged Don Prudhomme. What happened in that race? Well, the current national record holder, Eddie Hill, ripped off another 480 in qualifying, 4.89 seconds. But it was Prudhomme's turn as they reached the finish line, a 487 at over 296.
You're not taking the conservative approach in any way from what I can see.
Are you kidding me? I never have. If you do, you'll get beat. You know, you got to just roll the dice sometimes because, you know, you race a guy like Eddie Hill, he's no slouch, and he's liable to lay a 480 on you also.
Don Prudhomme, with that win, advanced to the semifinals. Now in that race between Doug Herbert and Corey McClenathan, as they went through their burnout procedures, this was a race that everybody said was a pick-em, and it certainly lived up to all of its advanced billing. Herbert has been a player all year long, qualified here at a 498. Practically matching run for run, Corey McClenathan. At the finish line, 20 thousandths of a second was the margin of victory. McClenathan winning it on a hole shot of 499 to a 497.
You were pedaling that car to a 499.
Had to. When I felt the tires break loose, I thought, not again. You know how many times I've gone up in smoke this year? I'm going to pedal this baby. I'm going to win this, Doug.
Bumped up?
Hey, I'm ready to go. Thanks.
The other half of our ladder found in round number 2, Kenny Bernstein against Ed McCulloch, and Joe Amato raced Danielle DePorter. At the age of 19, Danielle is one of the newest of the Top Fuel pilots and had never before been beyond the first round of competition. Here she squared off against the best, the 4-time Winston champion, Joe Amato, and Danielle as a driver performed to perfection. She was in the far lane, and what? She got a 400th of a second pole shot over Amato, but unfortunately the Paul Smith-owned car was unable to run the number. Amato won the race, 493 at 285.
Yeah, we were side by side. I was, what do you think? You know, I was just like, oh my gosh, there he is, and here I am. And there's always next time.
See you then.
Okay.
The other race of round number 2 found Ed McCulloch at the wheel of the McDonald's car with his crew chief Lee Beard, qualified in the number 9 spot at a 5.01. In his first round race, he beat Connie Coletta with a fine 494. We were on board as Kenny Bernstein came to the starting line in the near lane. The conditions in Atlanta were practically ideal for a 300-mile-an-hour run. But it was not to be. Neither was the victory for Bernstein, 498, and a win for McCulloch.
I left and I didn't see him in the thing. I picked the front end up out there and, you know, made a good move. I don't know what the times were, but felt pretty good.
I do, 498.
Well, that's not as good as I'd hoped for, but we'll take it.
Okay.
As McCulloch enjoyed his victory, all that was left for Dale Armstrong, the crew chief on the Winston points leader's car, to do was look over the motor, try to figure out what went wrong. The semifinal action will be coming up shortly. We'll find Corey McLenithan racing Don Prudhomme, with the Snake having the choice of lanes. The other side of the ladder finds Joe Amato against Ed McCulloch, and Joe holds the lane choice. As we see the Amato dragster headed out of the pit area into the staging lane, that signifies that the semifinal round of Top Fuel Eliminator will be coming up next, right here from the new Atlanta Dragway and the Fram Southern Nationals. Literally tens of thousands of fans jamming the pit area here at the new Atlanta Dragway as we get set for the final four of Top Fuel Racing. Of course, NHRA Winston Drag Racing, the only major motorsport that allows the fans into the pits up close to the drivers and their race cars. Ed McCulloch against Joe Amato, and the Winston champion holds the lane choice. He ran a 493 in the second round against the 498 for the bright red machine of McCulloch. That's what a burnout looks like from the driver's point of view, as Joe Amato somewhat conservative with the Valvoline machine on his burnout. Here again, we're on board with Joe. Out in front, you see McCulloch going through the backing up procedure after his much longer burnout. McCulloch making the switch this season from funny car eliminator, where he has been one of the dominant forces since the inception of that class. Joe Amato has certainly been dominant in Top Fuel racing over the last few years, has the highest win percentage of any driver in Top Fuel racing today, as he has notched 4 Winston Championship titles. Ed McCulloch is off to somewhat of a slow start this season. Earlier, Steve took a look at the latest speed secret.
Drag racers by nature are a superstitious lot, and I have seen a lot of different lucky charms in the pits, but never, ever a turtle. This little guy was found by Ed the Ace McCulloch. It was blistering hot 2 days ago. He was just about a goner, but they rescued him before somebody stepped on him, building this little grotto, and I mean, he is trucking around. Look at that guy. Now, McCulloch says this is the only thing they've changed in this operation. This is their best racing day of the season. If they win here in Atlanta, that turtle, he can have anything he wants. Gold-plated shell, anything.
The turtle better be standing up and cheering right now, because Ed McCulloch's got his work cut out for him. Of course, he's already put away the points leader, Kenny Bernstein, but now he takes on the big number 1. Amato in the near lane. McCulloch, 5 times a winner at Indianapolis Raceway Park and the U.S. Nationals in funny car competition, just really getting used to this Top Fuel car. Both cars set. Amato pulls away in mid-course, and a 487 elapsed time propels him to the finals, 287 miles an hour. McCulloch had a gigantic hole shot, a starting line advantage, ran 499. The margin of victory was just 70 thousandths of a second. Look at the red car in the far lane. McCulloch got the advantage over Amato, but Joe picked it up rather quickly until by the middle of the race course at an 1/8 of a mile point, he was ahead of Ed and continued to extend that lead to the finish line. That 487, low ET of eliminations.
This is the first time all weekend I've seen Joe Amato really animated. You like a 487.
Oh, Tim stepped on it a little bit, and I was just nervous wreck because it rattled the tires a little bit the last time, but the general knows Top Fuel, boy.
And now you know no matter what Prudhomme does, you can run with him.
Well, you know, we're running an NT combination here, but it's in this era, and it seems to be working pretty good. Well, I give him a lot of credit, boy. He's on that flow bench all weekend, really working at it. And I know these guys are going to be tough, but with Bernstein's car out in the second round with this Winston Points Championship in sight, we got to just keep working hard.
Joe Amato referring to his crew chief, Tim Richards. He calls him the General. Here's Corey McClenathan. You remember we told you he can run 490s all day long and has been doing it? Well, guess what? His competition has been running 480s. A 488 in the first round, a 487 in the second round. That gives the lane choice to Don Prudhomme in the Skull Bandit. Jimmy Brock and crew checking over the engine in the Corey Mack dragster, trying to step up to the performance level that we have seen out of Prudhomme thus far in elimination. Prudhomme had his problems during qualifying, but all of those appear to be behind him at this point. However, Don could be confronted with the same problem that Joe was just talking about, that of rattling or shaking the tires. That leads to a loss of traction and generally a loss of the race. Tremendous run by Prudhomme, 488. At 291 miles an hour, the losing time of 5:09. McClenathan was unable to run the number that he had been doing all day long at a 499. It was McClenathan with a whole shot off the starting line as we watch in instant replay. 0.03 of a second went to Corey Mack. If he had been able to run that low 490 that he had qualified with and been running all weekend long, guess what? This would have been a much closer race at the finish line. But problems set in for Corey Mack. Prudhomme streaked ahead and moved to the final round. There he will meet Joe Amato. And Amato, by virtue of his 487 low ET of eliminations, will get to pick his lane over the snake. Down at the far end, Steve Evans.
With unbelievable consistency, Don Prudhomme just continues to break their backs.
Run.
488.
That's pretty good, but I think Amato ran a little bit quicker, so we're going to have to do a little bit tune-up. But, you know, the Skull Winds car has been running pretty good at the race. We'll just have to see what we can do in the last round.
An excellent racetrack.
It really is, but, you know, he's got lane choice now, so we're going to have to really put our thinking caps on and see what we can do with it.
I think John Medlin and the Snake, they'll fund a little more for Amato.
We'll talk pro stock next. We're in the Pro Stock pit area at the 12th annual Fram Southern Nationals, and this is the Team 2 Oldsmobile of Don Beverly. The reason for that name, Team 2, is that it is actually owned by Warren Johnson Racing as the team vehicle. It is used as the test bed, if you will, to experiment with on different combinations. The big question is, can it be a competitive race car round after round? The answer may come from the crew chief, who is Warren's son, Kurt Johnson. Is this a competitive race car?
Oh, very much so, Dave. We just set low ET of the whole event in the second round with a 721, which is a 100th of a second better than Bob Glidden qualified low with.
Thank you, Kurt. All the action in Pro Stock here at the Southern Nationals has been incredible. After 4 of 18 events completed thus far this season, Jerry Ekman holds the lead in the Winston chase, followed by WJ. Mark Powick is third, Bruce Allen fourth, and Scott Jeffrion number 5. It was Ekman who had qualified in the number 5 spot with a 724, hoping to come back again a winner. He's already picked up 2 championships this year, but in the first round, he raced against Scott Jeffrion. We had a chance to ride on board the Mopar Parts Dodge Daytona and watch Scott at work at his office. This was the upset of the race in Pro Stock Eliminator. Jeffrion got the whole shot in the victory, a 727 to a losing 725. Moments later, Steve caught up with the loser.
Well, Jerry Ekman didn't waste any time getting on his second favorite machine. You hate to lose first round, but especially with a quicker ET.
Yeah, you certainly do, Steve, but you can't win every round. I had a 450 light. He got away with a good 420 light. It's certainly terrible to lose first round. This Pennzoil Pontiac's taken us a long way so far, but you know, you got to take the good with the bad. The first round losses are bad, but who'd have ever thought we'd have been in the points lead leaving Atlanta? And I'm happy with that, I guess.
Go for a ride and clear your head.
You bet. That's what I got to do.
The disappointment was obvious in Jerry Ekman's voice, and that first round loss will definitely put a dent in his Winston points lead. In the second round of Pro Stock in Atlanta, it was Don Beverly racing against Ricky Smith, while Lewis Warden, who enjoyed the best day of his career, challenged Mark Powick, the winner of the Houston event. Ricky Smith is noted for his quick reaction times. He qualified well, number 6 in the STP Pontiac at a 726. Don Beverly had a great qualifying performance. He ended up number 3 with a 7:23, then ran 7:25 in his first round victory. In the second round, though, it was all Beverly. His elapsed time, 7:21.
Don Beverly in the Appliance White Oldsmobile runs low elapsed time of the event, 7:21.
Is that right, Steve? I had no idea it was that good. We shook a little bit. It was a great run for us. I tell you, this is a hometown for Kurt Johnson and all the guys, and I hope we can really do a good job the rest of the day.
Well, so far you certainly are.
Thank you, Steve.
As Don Beverly headed back to the pit area, Mark Powick had something to celebrate as he got ready for his second round race against Lewis Warden. Powick picked up the sponsorship of the Home Depot, folks, at this event. Lewis Warden was in the midst of enjoying his greatest weekend of racing ever, but it came to a halt here in round number 2. Earlier, Powick had been plagued with some tire shake problems, but apparently he had them all solved because on this run, Powick recorded the lowest elapsed time of the weekend for that Oldsmobile, a great 7:23 at over 188.
Looks like you got rid of some of that shake out there the car had been doing.
Yeah, you know, the right lane this morning, the first round, there was a bad oil down, and I was really skating in 4th and 5th gear and just hanging on. And looks like that time we finally got a good lap in.
See you soon.
Thank you. I hope so.
Woo! Mark was obviously happy after that win. In the other half of the Pro Stock ladder for round number 2, we saw Bob Glidden race Larry Morgan, and Warren Johnson brought his old to the line against the Dodge of Scott Jeffrion. Bob Glidden's had quite a weekend, qualified first at a 7:21 and beat Gary Brown in round number 1.
I don't know if it's power or chassis or what, but low ET of the round, you continue to dominate here with a 22.
Well, I don't think we've done any dominating, Steve, but we're sure glad to get by another round. Like I told Mac yesterday, each round we win, not each race, but each round is what we're looking forward to.
Got Larry Morgan next.
Yeah, he'll be tough.
And tough he was. Bob Glidden was exactly right in his assessment of Larry Morgan. After less than a stellar performance in the first round when he ran only a 9:03, he got a whole shot on Glidden and ran quicker as well. 24 thousandths of a second difference at the finish line. Troubles in qualifying had kept Scott Jeffrion from the top of the field. He was only number 12, while Warren Johnson was number 4. Both took big wins in the first round to meet here in the second round of competition. Johnson in the far lane, Jeffrion in the near lane. The Dodge had been having problems getting a hold of the racetrack, but as we rode on this round win by Jeffrion, he got it stuck this time. 12 thousandths of a second, the difference at the finish.
Well, Scott, first to get the points leader, Jerry Ekman, then Warren Johnson, quite an afternoon.
Yeah, I'm having fun today. I really am. You know, as I said earlier, we were struggling throughout qualifying. We still haven't gotten a hold of this racetrack. This little Dodge is having a hard time with it, but thanks to Mopar and my crew, Dave Hutchins, Mike Sullivan, they've all hung behind me, and great guys.
I don't have to tell Scott he needs about 500 if he's to continue having fun.
I'm sure he knows that because he goes in against Larry Morgan in the semifinal round with Larry holding the choice of lane. The other half of our final 4 pair finds Don Beverly and Mark Powick dueling it out with the Battle of Oldsmobiles, and Beverly gets to pick his lane. Gallons and gallons of nitromethane going in the car of Joe Amato. That's his wife, Jerry, fueling the car. They're getting ready for the final round of Top Fuel Racing, where they will face Don Prudhomme. Before we get to that action, though, the semifinals of Pro Stock coming up next at the Fram Southern Nationals. We're at the new Atlanta Dragway. I'm Dave McCulloch along with Steve Evans, and we're looking into the pit of Don Prudhomme as John Medlin and his crew prepare that dragster for that race against Joe Amato. That will decide the Top Fuel champion here at the Fram Southern Nationals. Right now, though, we're on the starting line for the semifinal round of action in Pro Stock Eliminator. The Mopar Parts Dodge Daytona driven by Scott Jeffrion against the Castrol Olds of Larry Morgan. Has the weather affected Pro Stock racing? Steve asked a crew chief.
Mike Sullivan tuning up the clutch for the Scott Jeffrion driven Dodge Pro Stock. And Mike, this weather has given you more horsepower than you bargained for.
Yeah, well, we've had a lot of trouble all weekend. Number one, we had something wrong with the car, so we finally found out what that was late last night, and now we've got the cool air to boot, and we've run over the clutch both runs, so we are definitely having a lot of problems.
Well, the problems that Mike Sullivan described earlier certainly give rise to the thought that Larry Morgan has got a shot here. He comes into this race with an advantage of 0.02 of a second based on his second round victory. He got the lane choice, took the lane on the far side of the course. Both drivers taking their time before they get into the final staging beam. They're set. We're riding with Scott Jeffrion. A close race as the Dodge pulls ahead at the finish line. 7:18 at 191 miles an hour. That's got to start him thinking back in the Pro Stock pits. And look at Jeffrion. He is as happy as he can be as he brings the Dodge to a stop. Don Beverly in the white Oldsmobile. That's the Warren Johnson team car. He is up against Mark Powick and his Oldsmobile Cutlass. The lane choice here went to Beverly. He selected, as did Morgan, the far lane. 7:21 was his time from the previous round. 7:23 for Powick. This could be a close race as well. Let's go to Steve.
Okay, watch that pace. Scott Jeffrion, 7:18.
I knew if we could just get this thing hooked up to the racetrack, we could run pretty good here. We've been every which way but straight this weekend, and it felt like a good straight run. So,
you know, we saw Mike Sullivan, crew chief, doing a lot of clutch work.
Yeah, you know, they don't come any better than Mike Sullivan, Dave Hutchins, you know, Gibber, Mike Molt, Dodge, Mopar, everybody. And I'd like to just say hi to my mom and dad. I love you guys, and thanks for standing behind me.
And Mom and Dad, he's headed.
Me too.
He's headed for the final round.
And as he heads there, Steve, he's got low ET of eliminations. That great 7:18. Beverly and Powick into the staging procedures. They're in the pre-stage lights right now. They'll roll forward about another 6 inches. When both lights are lit at the top of the trees, they're ready. And starter Buster Couch can throw the switch at any time. A tremendous start for both drivers. And Beverly in the far lane starts to pull ahead and finishes ahead of Powick. 7:21 at 191 miles an hour. A great pass for Beverly. That puts him in the finals for the second time this season. Here in instant replay, you can see both cars leaving the starting line at almost identical reaction time. Beverly, though, had the power, and he stuck it to the pavement better than Powick. He pulled ahead ever so slightly at this point until at the finish line it was nearly a car length lead, 49 thousandths of a second, the margin of victory for Don Beverly. That now advances him into the final round, where he has the opportunity to race the car that's got low ET of eliminations and the lane choice. Scott Jeffrion and the Dodge. In the John Force pit area, that's Bernie Federle, formerly the crew chief for Larry Minor on his funny car operation. He's now working for John Force. Force is in the final 4. We'll tell you who he raced and how he got there. Coming up next at the Fram Southern Nationals.
Laying in the gap.
We're back at the 12th annual Fram Southern Nationals at the new Atlanta Dragway, and we are in the pit area of young Del Worsham, the defending funny car champion. In fact, it was at this race just 1 year ago that Del Worsham started his march to NHRA's Rookie of the Year honors. On paper, his first round race against the Motorcraft Ford Arizona Nationals champion Tom Hoover looked to be the toughest. That's because Hoover had been the most consistent round winner in racing thus far this season and was 4th in the Winston standings, headed by John Force coming into this event. Del Worsham was standing in 7th place. Hoover had qualified number 11 with a 5:39. Worsham had qualified a bit better at 5.30, but excitement happened in the first round. Watch the car of Tom Hoover. His day was over.
Tom Hoover with these carbon bodies coming in at about $25,000 these days. Not a pretty sight.
No, it ain't. For sure, a new car and new fuel system, too. I shouldn't blame it on the car. We came down with a bunch of new fuel things on the car. And obviously, there's good air today. The car's lean and hit the throttle. I'm more discouraged right now than anything.
You can tell.
The damage extensive to the Scott color print film Dodge Daytona. Del Worsham went on to win 5:39. His elapsed time, that moved him to round number 2. Jim Epler, the winner out at the Winter Nationals in the first round of funny car racing here, had qualified number 12. He had had a tough weekend. He blew the body off of the car during qualifying, was able to repair, and came back to race Chuck Etchells in the first round at Atlanta. Etchells in the Nobody Beats the Whiz car. The Dodge Daytona up against the Mack Friends Black Diamond entry of Epler. Smoke in the cockpit indicated loss of traction, and Etchells advanced with a 5:27 at 266 miles an hour. The second round of funny car racing saw Whit Bazemore up against Del Worsham. And Gary Densham brought his Oldsmobile to the line to race against Paul Smith. For Whit Bazemore and his fast orange Ford Probe, this has been a great weekend, even if he had stopped right after qualifying. He ran a 5:26, his quickest elapsed time ever. 22-year-old Del Worsham has some fond memories of this racetrack. That's his dad, Chuck Worsham. He is the crew chief on this race car, and it was 1 year ago here that in the final round he put away Mark Oswald to take his first ever victory at the tender age then of 21. And the good feelings continued this year.
Skating around just a little bit.
Yeah, this track, the right lane's not real good, and you just got to drive around a little bit, it seems like.
525.
Yeah, my dad and the crew, they're doing a real good job. We've had some tough problems this weekend, and he's really starting to get it ironed out.
And this is a special place for you.
Oh, yeah, that's where I got my first win a year ago.
If there was a surprise in funny car racing, it was Gary Densham in the California Discount Warehouse Oldsmobile. Qualified second at a 5:25 and defeated Gary Bolger in the first round. Paul Smith, his competition in round 2, qualified 10th at a fine 5:38 and had defeated Gordon Mineo to earn the right to face up against Densham. Densham had a tremendous hole shot at the starting line, nearly 15 hundredths of a second, and that was more than enough to put away Paul Smith. As Smith got very close to the center line and was forced to shut off, Densham went on to win at a 5:43. The other half of the ladder found Mark Oswald up against Chuck Etchells, while Cruz Pedragon took on John Force in a titanic battle in round number 2. Oswald, driving the Petosa Brothers Dodge Daytona, had been the number 4 qualifier at a 5:26, and just 3 weeks ago had won the Winston Invitational at Rockingham. But Chuck Etchells used the talents of his crew chief Maynard Yanks to perfection, as Oswald had problems, and Etchells ran 5:30 at 273.
You're headed for the semis. Can't beat it.
Well, I'll tell you, for our sponsors and all, we sure need it, and we're thankful.
Go get them.
Thanks.
With performances like that, we're going to hear a lot more from Chuck Etchells before this year is over. One of the true great rivalries of funny car competition was the next race in round number 2. It was John Force in the Castrol Oldsmobile against the McDonald's Oldsmobile of Cruz Pedragon, the car owned by Larry Minor. Cruz had stunned everyone in qualifying, a track record time of 5.15 seconds. But the reigning Winston champ ended the young man's day here in round number 2. As Pedragon left the starting line, he lost traction. Force went on to the win at a 5:21.
We overpowered the track big time. We just were, we had our 510 set up in it, and the track obviously didn't quite want to take it.
Sometimes big horsepower can bite you.
Sometimes, you know, we got thrown off that first round running in a slow, having problems. That threw us off mechanically, and we just couldn't get it together, but we'll be back.
Great qualifying, Everett.
Thank you.
That brings us to the final 4 here in Funny Car at Atlanta as Del Worsham and Gary Densham square off. The defending champ has the lane choice. The other pair, John Force, with his great 5:21, gets to pick his lane over Chuck Etchells. A record-breaking crowd jammed into the new Atlanta Dragway, where we'll be coming right back for the final 4 in Funny Car Racing. If you don't think the clutch is important in pro stock racing, Mike Sullivan's hard at work once again, while Scott Jeffrion, the finalist in pro stock against Don Beverly, psychologically prepares himself. I want to take a moment to invite you to become a member of a very special organization, the National Hot Rod Association. For $48 a year, you get 48 issues of National Dragster, a patch, a pin, rule book, and more. And if you order by calling the number on your screen, you'll get a free copy of Diamond P's home video, Drag Racing 90. Why don't you give them a call today? The burnout's underway in the semifinals of Funny Car Eliminator. Del Worsham, the defending champ, against Gary Densham. And this is one of the best performances we have seen out of Gary Densham for quite a number of seasons. the longtime veteran from the Southern California area in the California Discount Warehouse Oldsmobile, has certainly jumped up into contention at this race. 5:25. It was earlier this season in Houston that Densham had lots of problems. A severe fire seriously damaged the race car. He took it back home, put it all back together, and here he is in the final four against the defending champ Del Worsham. This 22-year-old youngster has served notice on the racing community that he is here to win. Winning not only this event last season, he also took home the title of the Summer Nationals up in Englishtown, New Jersey. At that point, everybody said Del Worsham is for real. He has never driven any other type of race car other than a nitro-burning funny car, and here he is trying to earn his way into the final round for the second year in a row at the Fram Southern Nationals. The two drivers now concentrating on the starting line. And something goes wrong with Gary Densham's car, and Del Worsham goes into the finals. 5:35 elapsed time. His speed 277 miles an hour. Tremendous performance and a great job by the entire crew, headed by his dad Chuck, to get him to this point. As Chuck Etchells does his burnout, let's go to the far end of the racetrack where Steve Evans has caught up with Del Worsham.
How about it, young man? For the second year in a row here in Atlanta, you go to the finals.
Yeah, this is great. My dad has the car running good. I've seen him for a long time, and finally, right towards the end, it came around him.
Did it handle any better? It's been a tough car to drive.
Yeah, we put a new set of tires on it. It quit shaking down there, handling better. Things are going real good here. I'd like to thank the crew, Hartman's crew, Ray and Shorty Strasser. Everyone's back there giving us a hand.
Everybody helps everybody in this sport.
Back at the starting line, the reigning Winston champ and current leader in the points chase, John Force in his Castrol Oldsmobile into the burnout procedure. But this has not been an all-great weekend for John Force. Earlier, Steve talked with him.
For the first time in the Force pits, there's a little bit of joy because, John, the last 2 or 3 days haven't been very pretty, my friend.
Well, it's really tough, Steve, but getting around old crews is plenty tough, and I'm trying to stay calm and cool, but the real truth is it's the points that matters. Yeah, we're happy. It's great. We ain't won yet, but from here on out, it's just gravy, but we're having fun.
John Force celebrating because the remainder of the top 5 in the Winston point standings already out of competition. Even if he loses this race to the nobody beats the whiz car of Chuck Etchells, Force will advance even further in the Winston point standings. The body coming up on the Castrol Olds as crew chief Austin Coyle goes underneath. Makes a final check of the operation. Maynard Yanks has performed the same procedure on the car of Chuck Etchells. Maynard Yanks, you remember him from his abilities to tune up Bruce Larson to a Winston championship just about 3 years ago. The work of the crews and the crew chiefs all over at this point. The drivers have one thing to concentrate on, and that is trying to get off the starting line first without leaving a red light, which indicates you left too soon. They're set. And it is John Force spitting fire for the last 1/8 of a mile, but easily taking the win over Etchells. 5:22 at 2:65, 5:31 the losing time. Our instant replay will show you a tremendous starting line advantage gained by John Force. His concentration paid off by 0.04 of a second. As they went down the racetrack, the flames started coming out of the headers, possibly signifying some problems for Force, but it didn't slow him much on this run. 5:22 at 265 miles an hour. That sets up the pairings for the finals in Funny Car Eliminator, where the defending champ Del Worsham loses lane choice to John Force. Let's go to the far end and Steve Evans.
Well, John, it runs a nice 5:22, but there's more there if you can never put the fire out of the pipes.
Yeah, well, Coyle, they're jumping back and forth, and he kept putting some pump to her, then he took pump away from her. I think that's what he did. But, yeah, she's nosing over big, and I'll tell you what, it's hard for me because I know driving into the first cone and she's already dead, but, like, take your foot off against these guys, they'll drive around you. I've had that happen, but we're excited, and you know, what can I say? My weekend last night at the Fram banquet, I told him, guys, been nothing but a bad weekend, but this is my first time in a final in Atlanta. It's kind of a neat deal.
Neat to have you there, John.
Back in the Pro Stock pit area, they're getting Don Beverly's car ready, and look who's working on it. The guy that owns it, Warren Johnson, bent over the front of the engine. Back in the back, they're packing the parachute. This is the second final round appearance for Beverly. That'll be coming up next at the Fram Southern Nationals. Historically, drag racing has been known as a family sport, and here is living proof. That is Chuck Worsham back at the back of the race car. He's the father. There is the son and the driver, Del Worsham, for the second year in a row. They are in the finals of Funny Car Eliminator, but they have got a tremendous job ahead of them to beat John Force. Don Beverly, winner last in 1986 at the Keystone Nationals. His only national event title comes into the final round, the underdog against the Mopar Parts Dodge Daytona of Scott Jeffrion. You're on board with Scott as the Warren Johnson-owned Oldsmobile, driven by Beverly, pulls to the line in the far side of the racetrack. He may not have wanted to run in this lane, but it was not his choice. Low ET of eliminations at a 7:18 gave Scott Jeffrion the opportunity to select the lane he wanted. You hear the RPM starting to mount, 500 cubic inches out in front of Scott Jeffrion. The cars weigh 2,350 pounds, and Jeffrion's got his hands full. Look at that. Don Beverly streaks on by, and to the finish line, he's got the win, and his crew chief, Kurt Johnson, celebrates. For Scott Jeffrion, what a disappointment this has to be. He had run that great elapsed time in the semis, then came here the favorite in the final round, only to lose and loss of traction. Watch the car in instant replay in the near lane. He got precariously close to that concrete barrier, was forced to lift. That gave Beverly the opportunity to scoot on by, and he capitalized as he ran the quickest elapsed time of his weekend at 7.20 seconds at over 191 miles an hour. Steve?
1986 to 1992. Now that's a dry spell.
How long is that, Steve? That's a long time. And I tell you, I'm just so happy for Kurt Johnson, for Warren, for Greg Anderson, for Big Dave, for Gordy, for all the people involved. But I tell you what, I want to really thank all the people at Oldsmobile that stuck behind Don Beverly for all these years. And I'm going to dedicate this to all the people in Lansing, Michigan, and I'm very happy.
Well put. Congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
Your Pro Stock champion, Don Beverly.
The celebration begins in Pro Stock Eliminator as Jerry Ekman continues to hold the lead. Warren Johnson second. Don Beverly with his win jumped up to fourth following Mark Powick, and Scott Jeffrey on number 5 after 5 of 18 events completed. Don Prudhomme, the Skull Bandit, headed towards the staging lanes. We've got 2 final rounds left. Top Fuel and Funny Cars coming up next. At the Fram Southern Nationals at the new Atlanta Dragway just north of Atlanta, Georgia. It is not warmed up temperature-wise, but the competition incredibly hot, as is proven out by our Funny Car Final. John Force, you're sitting on board as the body comes up for Austin Coyle to come underneath the Castrol Olds and check it out. John with a wave to our Diamond B Sports cameras. In the far lane, Del Worsham knows that he's going to have to come up with about a 1/10 of a second improvement in his performance. Based on the semifinal round, John Force with a 5:22 picks his lane. The time 5:35 was the run by Worsham. Sitting on board with John Force, that's the view of the Christmas tree he has as he comes into the staging beams. Tremendous race at the finish line, just inches. John Force of the Castrol Olds takes the victory, 5:24 to a 5:25, nearly identical reaction times off the starting line. One incredibly close drag race. The total margin of victory only 13 thousandths of a second. In the near lane, Force. In the far lane, Worsham, and they battled this one out from the starting line to the finish line. There was no quarter given. It was literally in just the last few feet of this racetrack that John Force was able to squeeze by and win it.
John Force, that may have been the closest drag race of your career. By thousands, you pulled it out.
You know, I'd like to feel better, Steve, but I just like that kid. He's good, he's tough, and hot damn, he raced me right into them lights. I thought neck and neck. I didn't know what he'd done. He did a job on me, I think, on the lights, but I did on them other guys.
I got to tell you, this thing was popping and banging all day, fire out of the pipes. I feared for you, man.
It's been doing that all weekend, Steve. But you know, like I say, the money's put here to produce. We had to break a lot of parts, and I want to thank my people from the wax shop and Dorman and Oldsmobile especially, and Castro GTX on top, Jolly Rancher, and my guys Austin Coyle and my crew, the attack team, and want to stay on top of it. Trying to keep normal here. This was just a great weekend. It's my dance. Tell the kids, put water in the pool. We're coming home. The budget's back.
Yeah, and his wife may have to learn to do the lambada the way he's dancing.
There's always something new with John Force. What isn't new, though, is that he continues to lead the Winston point standings with Cruz Pedragon second, Jim Epler third, Tom Hoover fourth, and Del Worsham with his runner-up position moves into the number 5 spot. Here is Don Prudhomme. He won 3 weeks ago at Rockingham and the Winston Invitational for his first major event victory of the season. That was a non-points event. Don has not fared well. This car has not lived up to the potential that it showed in testing prior to the Winter Nationals when it ran a 488. That is, until he came here to Atlanta. But he knows he's got a job to do here as Joe Amato with the Valvoline car comes to the starting line. Amato, by 100th of a second, has the lane choice. 487 in the semis for Amato. 488, the time turned by Prudhomme. This, another of the great pick-em races. You take your choice as to who will win. And Prudhomme pulls out ahead, smoking a motor, but it doesn't matter. The crew begins the celebration, and Don Prudhomme, with his elapsed time of 4.96 seconds, his slowest of eliminations, defeats the reigning Winston champ, Joe Amato, who could only run a 5:14. Our instant replay shows a 300th of a second hole shot by the car in the far lane. That's Don Prudhomme. As they reached the middle of the course, Prudhomme had extended his lead, but it was there that the problem started. Look at the smoke starting to pour out of the engine. Amato says, I've got a chance, but his car falls down on him. And Prudhomme, even though he torched a motor, has got the victory. A big ball of fire in the shutdown area presented no problems for Prudhomme as far as the handling of the race car, and he was uninjured. The fire put itself out. Steve?
Well, Don Prudhomme gives a whole new meaning to the old phrase, going out in a blaze of glory. She was a lit, man. She was a glow.
Man, I could tell that baby was in big trouble behind me there. It shook real bad through the middle, and I thought that's over for me, and then it hooked up, and it hurt the engine when it did at the end, and I just hung with it, and I didn't see Joe at the end. That's all I do.
Talk about competitive. 5 races, and you're the 5th winner.
Well, it sure is. It's a tremendous series. It just goes to show, and especially how close these cars are with, you know, NHRA running the show like they are nowadays. But, you know, I really got to thank Skoll and Haviland and Pontiac and GM Truck and Champion, people that really stuck beside me, and I really appreciate it. Texaco Haviland.
And you've had quite a race. Your quickest elapsed time ever and your best speed ever.
Well, yeah, it's been a good race for us, but believe me, we needed to win after all the stuff we tore up here, believe me.
He did. He blew 2 engines today, but what a great campaigner. He just never gives up.
And Steve, that victory moved him into the number 8 spot, into the top 10 for the first time this season in the Winston chase for top fuel that is headed by Kenny Bernstein. Amato second, Austin third, Eddie Hill fourth, and Mike Brotherton rounds out the top 5. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from the new Atlanta Dragway. The 1991 NHRA Fram Southern Nationals has been brought to you by Fram Oil Filters. Fram, you can pay a little now or a lot later. By Quaker State, the Big Q is one tough motor oil. And by Budweiser, the king of beers, with that clean, crisp, cold taste. Nothing beats a Bud. Coverage of the NHRA Southern Nationals has been a presentation of Diamond P Sports in association with ESPN.